So who knows what a strong or weak government looks like in the next few weeks, and whether that term is metaphorical or not anymore, or purely political or not. But yes, the one additional rider it's worth saying is that the EU itself is once again under unbelievable pressure because of the reassertion of the very thing that the EU since Maastricht has sought to overcome, which is the nation state. And during the current crisis, as with the migration crisis of 2015, which I wrote about in The Strange Death of Europe, we see this thing in which a political construct, whatever one thinks of it, a political construct of the EU is tested and indeed shown to be an ideological project whose practical boundaries are at least questionable by the fact that in the face of a crisis in 2015 and now in 2020, the nation states reassert themselves, even in the face of the insistence that they wouldn't do so. You know, it was not the EU that closed its borders. It was the announcement that Germany had closed its borders, that France had closed its borders, that Italy and Hungary and country after country closed their borders. It was in each case done as a unilateral action. And as everywhere in the world, you know, having talked about, thought about, traveled throughout the whole issue of borders for some years, it's if you'd said to me a couple of years ago, what are the circumstances in which Justin Trudeau announces that, you know, foreigners will not be allowed to Canada from tomorrow, you know, I can't see how that happens. And lo and behold, it does. But there are very interesting things in this that, again, go back to this thing of, you know, my fear of any kind of prediction. But it is interesting that when societies are tested, they find where their natural points of resilience are and where its natural feeling of unity lies. This goes back to something you mentioned about Scruton earlier. This goes back to something that Scruton wrote about a lot, which was what is the widest, most legitimate form of the first person plural, of what is the best form of we. What do we mean when we say we? We is who? And we, the nation state, has historically been, we all know it's not it's by no means a fail-safe. It's by no means, it's not exactly as if it's not something that can go wrong. You know, we all, anyone who knows history knows how the nation state can go wrong. It's not as if it's the perfect answer to everything, but it is and will continue to be, and perhaps now will be reasserted as being, the widest way in which you can talk of we with legitimate feeling of ownership to things you yourself may not necessarily have contributed that meaningfully to. An entity from which you can also draw, something you can share, so that you feel pride when that we does something well, and indeed some shame if it does something badly. But yes, everywhere in Europe, everywhere in the world, the reassertion of the we of the nation state is one of the most remarkable things going on as we speak.
Your insights are absolutely undeniable. So, I mean, a simple way of illustrating that, I suppose, would be to say that an understandably worried Italian doesn't look to Brussels for the solution. They look to their own government.
And look at how, and by the way, I mean, and that itself requires some leap of faith among the Italian people. For I don't be seen to be making some kind of anti-Italian point here, but I mean, to put one's faith in the Italian government it requires what Kierkegaard may have referred to as a leap of faith. Italy is a country since the last war that was almost set up to be ungovernable. But it is very striking and quite right that the Italian people look to their government to do this, because once again, during this crisis, the supranational government of the EU actually has turned its back quite outrageously, in my view, upon Italy. And this will teach its own lessons, not all of them by any means good. There are other signs. The president of Serbia the other day, extraordinarily making remarks about how the EU, which it has been, of course, seeking to join, had never been its true friend, and that actually its true friend that had come to its aid in its hour of crisis was China.
Yeah.
Now, these are in statements like this, which will have passed many people by. In statements like this, where the president of a country like Serbia claims that at this moment of crisis, it is China that has proved to be the true friend. In moments like this, one can see some of the fault lines in which the era after this crisis will be run along. And, an enormous amount is going to depend on whether or not that line of thinking, that line of mercenary political and financial thinking, whether that is properly tested and indeed contested or not.
Well, that goes to the issue I was raising earlier. I think the debates we have after this will be very important. And another way of looking at this would be to say, presumably, hopefully, somebody will come up with an antidote soon, with a solution, with an inoculation.
Yeah.
But the country in which that happens, I'm sure, will not be very keen on exporting it until they have enough for their own needs, their own people. And
yes.
that, you will see, I would have thought, part of what is emerging, a clear acceptance that globalisation has its limits.
Yes, I mean, that is one of the things that we've talked about in recent years and haven't been very willing to acknowledge. It's very interesting the way in which people talk about these things, which globalization as a term is one of those tricky ones, isn't it? Because it can be. I would use it as a description of a demonstration, a description of facts, of the fact that we live in an unprecedentedly interconnected world. Some people, however, use globalization as meaning an ideological project, and it's worth making clear which one of those one means. I think that the globalization of the first one, how I use it, the description of the interconnected world, which is a morally neutral point, I think, in a way. It's to say that is neither a good nor a bad. It means that it has good and potentials within it, but like everything else in life, that it is a description of a natural state, will also have drawbacks. Well, to that extent, we are currently learning and seeing some of the drawbacks of globalization, just as, every single one of these things. Look at the advantages of technology. The advantage of technology that allows John Anderson and me to be talking literally on opposite sides of the planet is, to my mind, a terrific good. But it is the same technology that can be used for terrible bad, for the pumping out of bad and untrue ideas. And it's the same with globalization.
Thank you for watching this episode. We appreciate your support. If you value vital conversations like this one, be sure to subscribe to the channel there, and also click the notification bell to stay up to date with new releases.